Hey guys, tonight we step into a reality that bends time and tosses the logic of history right out the longhouse window. Imagine this. You open your eyes one crisp morning and everything smells off. Not bad, just different. Smoke in the air, pine, salt. There's a clang of metal on metal. Somewhere close, a man is shouting about honor and mead. You sit up slowly, and in place of your IKEA dresser sits a massive wooden chest carved with ravens. Outside, the street you know is gone. Instead, packed dirt, a blacksmith hammering away, and a goat trotting by like it owns the place. Welcome back to the Viking Age. Except it's today, and you're very much still in 2025. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and local time in the comments. I love knowing where you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge outside, rubbing your eyes, and it hits you. The people around you look like extras from a history documentary, except there are neon signs flickering above the mead hall. The street is a bizarre blend of thatched roofs and solar panels. A Viking child runs by, clutching a tablet playing Minecraft, screaming something about Loki stealing his diamonds. You blink. The tablet is tied to his belt with a leather thong. Naturally. It turns out this town, nestled somewhere between Bergen and Bizarre, has become a spontaneous Norse enclave. Vikings, real ones, have returned. Not as ghosts or role players, but as themselves, flesh and blood, roaring and confused. Historians still argue whether it's reincarnation, wormholes, or some freak cosmic accident involving fermented herring and particle physics. You don't have time to think about it. A man the size of a refrigerator is pointing at your sneakers and demanding to know if they're dragon hide. Soon, you're surrounded by people who call themselves Bjorn, Astrid, and Ulf the Unwashed. You meet a woman with braids to her hips who gives you a piece of advice. Don't mention Jesus or electricity. The gods are touchy today. She offers you a sip from a drinking horn that smells like root beer and regret. You decline, politely. Around you, a marketplace unfolds. Modern scaffolding holds up old-world wooden signs. Traders barter iPhones for smoked eel. A corner booth offers Bluetooth syncing, rune translation, and goat grooming. You're not entirely sure it's a joke. Mainstream fact of the day. The Bluetooth symbol is actually a mashup of two Viking runes, representing King Harald Bluetooth Gormson, a real Viking king who united Denmark and Norway. Yep, your wireless headphones owe their name to a guy who wore wolf pelts and possibly ate boar for breakfast. Quirky tidbit? There's an actual town in Sweden, Uppsala, where scholars believe sacrifices were made by hanging humans from sacred trees. Don't worry, no trees are screaming here, yet. Back in Vikingville, the townsfolk are trying to grasp the rules of this new world. They understand coins are outdated and try to pay for things with silver arm rings. One enterprising modern teenager sets up a crypto for mead station. You overhear a Viking ask if Bitcoin is a kind of rune spell. A treasure spell, the teen replies, and both nod seriously. Your Airbnb host, a wiry guy named Magnus with a PhD in Norse mythology and a surprising tolerance for fermented shark, gives you a tour. They started showing up a few weeks ago, he says. First just one, then dozens. We think they're drawn to the fjords, or maybe they're allergic to suburbs. By nightfall, the town glows with the eerie warmth of torchlight. There's no TV, just stories around fire pits and the occasional Viking band performing sea shanties with electric guitars, badly. It's kind of charming, also mildly terrifying. You try to leave, but your phone's GPS shows nothing but a swirling vortex. Typical. One guy named Eric, the chronically disoriented, claims the edge of town loops like a video game map. I walked east for 6 hours and came back to the same bakery, he says, munching on a cinnamon roll with smoked fish frosting. It's a local delicacy. No thanks. You fall asleep to the sound of distant battle chants, a softly humming drone of techno-mead remixes, and the low muttering of an elder carving runes into a traffic sign. The final thing you see before your eyes close is a raven perched on a street lamp, watching you like it knows something you don't. Which it probably does. Morning comes, and with it, the distinct sound of someone trying to teach a Viking how to use Google Maps. You stretch, glance outside, and see a shirtless man in a fur cape, screaming at a street pole. Turns out, he thought the blinking pedestrian signal was some kind of mocking spirit. His friend calmly explains, "No, Bjorn. That light tells people when to walk, not when to conquer. The village has grown overnight. More Vikings have arrived, some arriving on foot, others in makeshift longships hauled by pickup trucks. A group of teenagers watches them from behind a 7-Eleven, half fascinated, half filming TikToks. One particularly enthusiastic Viking named Hrothgar attempts to duel a Red Bull refrigerator. You wish you were making this up. Today is Wi-Fi Orientation Day, hosted in what used to be a community center but is now called the House of Knowledge and Minor Sorcery. Inside, a haggard IT consultant with a beard nearly rivaling Odin's is doing his best. He holds up a router and declares, "This is how we summon the world tree, digitally." The Vikings are awestruck. They call smartphones seeing stones, and their first instinct is to treat them like sacred talismans. You watch as a woman swipes through Instagram for the first time and gasps, convinced she's just witnessed someone's soul. Historians still argue, says your guide Magnus, whether Vikings would have embraced new tech or smashed it with an axe. Here, they're doing both, often at the same time. You join a workshop titled Modern Marvels and Their Proper Use. The curriculum includes electricity, not a spell, microwave, not a portal, Google Translate, definitely not an oracle. Bidets, let's just say there's confusion. Outside, two bearded warriors hold up a flat-screen TV like it's a divine artifact. "Look," one mutters in awe, "this must be the black mirror they speak of in sagas." The screen is off, but they won't let go. At the local cafe, now humorously rebranded as the Mead Bean, Vikings try coffee for the first time. The reaction is immediate and explosive. One man names his double espresso Mjolnir, claiming it gives him thunder in his veins. Another insists it's dark elf blood and refuses to drink anything else. You notice how quickly some of them adapt. A younger Viking, Skadi, is already live-streaming her day to thousands of followers. "These little boxes," she tells you, holding up her phone, "they let your voice carry over oceans, like Heimdall's horn." Mainstream fact for today: Vikings were exceptional seafarers. Their longships could navigate open ocean and shallow rivers using a sunstone to detect the position of the sun even in overcast skies, a tool possibly more accurate than early compasses. Today's Vikings? Still working out how to use Google Calendar. For lunch, you grab a traditional modern meal, sushi with a side of seaweed chips. The man sitting next to you asks if it's serpent flesh wrapped in bark. When you say no, he seems disappointed. He offers you a slab of dried reindeer instead. You accept. It's chewy, but not bad. Later, a crisis breaks out. Someone introduces Siri to a group of elders. One of them asks where to find the nearest forest. Siri responds in her usual robotic tone, and the entire circle goes quiet. One whispers, "The stone woman speaks." They spend the next hour trying to appease her with poetry and goat cheese. It's not all chaos. In fact, there's something unexpectedly wholesome about watching this collision unfold. The elders treat every device with reverence, like a rune-carved talisman. Children treat iPads like treasure maps, and in return, the town begins to change. Street signs now come with rune translations. The fire department has a Viking volunteer squad who refuse to use hoses but are excellent with buckets. The school introduces Saga Hour, where kids learn to recite their ancestry and how to use Excel. Your favorite moment comes at sundown. A group gathers on the cliffs overlooking the sea, watching the waves roll in. A young Viking tells a story of Jörmungandr, the world serpent, and then, without prompting, pulls out his phone and plays a YouTube animation of it. The blend of myth and meme is oddly comforting. As night falls, a massive feast begins in the town square. There are fairy lights strung between old wooden beams, Viking drums thumping in rhythm with dubstep beats, and a surprising number of people wearing horned hats, even though those are historically inaccurate. Fun fact, real Vikings didn't wear horned helmets. That myth comes from 19th century opera costumes, but try telling that to Lars, who has glued 2 salad forks to his motorcycle helmet. By the time you crawl into bed, well, a hammock made of wool and questionable rope, you're exhausted. A raven croaks from the window. Someone outside is trying to explain DoorDash to a confused shield maiden. This new world is messy, loud, bewildering, but strangely beautiful, and you can't help but wonder, if they can adapt to our world, could we learn something from theirs? The next day begins with a distant thud, not the soft patter of rain or the hum of traffic, but the unmistakable sound of a warhammer slamming into an ATM. You shuffle outside, groggy, and watch as a small crowd gathers around the glowing machine, which has just been accused of stealing gold. The Viking responsible, a man named Egil the Slightly Confused, is demanding compensation in silver ingots. A bank teller arrives and nervously offers him a Visa card. Egil sniffs it and asks if it can be eaten. This is the part where things get weird, which is saying something, because you've already seen someone try to cast a rune spell on a microwave. Today's cultural clash? Viking religion versus modern laws. You're not ready. In the town's old municipal office, now called the Hall of Order and Sacrifice, to bureaucracy, a meeting is underway. On one side, local officials in suits sipping lukewarm coffee. On the other, a delegation of chieftains, shamans, and one goat. The goat is apparently sacred. No one is entirely sure why. The topic? A temple to Odin that's being built on public land, without permits, zoning clearance, or any understanding of plumbing. The Vikings insist the gods require open flame and regular blood offerings. The city insists fire codes exist for a reason. The debate is lively, and by lively you mean someone just challenged a clerk to trial by combat. Mainstream historical fact. Viking religion wasn't centrally organized like Christianity or Islam. Instead, it was a collection of local cults, each with their own rituals and interpretations. Some Vikings worshipped Thor above all. Others favored Freya, Njord, or even Loki, though those were the edgy ones. There was no Bible, just poetry and memory. Quirky tidbit. There's archaeological evidence that Vikings sometimes buried people with severed horse heads, either as a status symbol or to confuse grave robbers. You'll be thinking about that all week, won't you? Here in this modern town turned Midgard 2.0, the Norse faith is alive again. But fitting it into a secular society is complicated. A group of Asatru followers, modern pagans who already worship the Norse gods, try to mediate. We've been doing this for decades, one woman tells a Viking priest, but without, the actual goats. The Viking stares. Then what do you sacrifice? Mostly time and dignity. You wander through town as tensions simmer. A new shrine has popped up next to a gas station. At its center is a statue of Odin made from welded bicycle parts. People leave offerings, coins, feathers, Bluetooth earbuds. A small sign reads, "Praise be to the one-eyed wanderer. Take a selfie, but no flash photography." Across town, a court hearing is in session. A Viking woman named Brynhild is defending her right to duel a parking officer. "He dishonored my steed," she claims, pointing at her motor scooter. The judge, bless her patience, tries to explain that civil disputes don't involve axes anymore. Brynhild seems unconvinced. Meanwhile, back at the temple site, a compromise is reached. The Viking builders agree to install smoke detectors and restrict sacrifices to ceremonial bread and root vegetables. No blood, no fireballs. The gods will understand, says one elder. They've survived worse. At lunch, you find yourself sitting between a local pastor and a Viking seeress. They're debating whether divine visions can be transmitted through YouTube. Sure, says the pastor, if the Wi-Fi's strong enough. The seeress nods solemnly, then asks if she can bless your phone. You let her, just in case. You realize that while the Vikings are struggling to understand things like laws and insurance, modern society is also struggling to understand them. There's a tension between freedom of religion and public safety, between ancient rights and modern responsibilities. Historians still argue whether Viking belief systems would have evolved with time or clashed catastrophically with statehood. The answer here? A little of both. By dusk, things are calmer. The temple construction continues, now featuring fire exits and eco-friendly insulation. A local rabbi swings by and compliments the craftsmanship. A Buddhist monk donates some incense. It's like a religious potluck, and you're not entirely sure what's cooking, but it smells like enlightenment and burnt rye bread. At the community center, now functioning as a cultural embassy, a class is underway. How to worship responsibly in 2025. A woman named Ingrid explains sacred geometry using PowerPoint. Odin's eye hovers over a pie chart. You don't know whether to be confused or impressed. One young Viking, Leif, seems deeply affected by modern philosophy. You mean, the gods don't control everything? He asks you, eyes wide. We have free will? You nod. He sits quietly for a long while, then mutters, I must tell the others. Night falls again. Fires burn low, and somewhere in the distance you hear a Viking reciting the Havamal, Odin's wisdom poetry, through a karaoke machine. It's weird, it's beautiful, and for the first time, it feels like something ancient and something new are learning to coexist. You wake up to the sound of scissors. That's unusual enough, but what's truly alarming is the fact that the scissors are being used to trim a wolf pelt someone left drying on your front door. You stumble outside to discover a small pop-up fashion market has appeared overnight, and it's entirely Viking run. Apparently, modern-day influencers aren't the only ones who understand branding. The Vikings, quick to realize that the world loves their rugged aesthetic, have gone full runway. And their fashion sense? It's blowing up. You spot Ulf the Tall, previously known for chasing pigeons with a stick, now modeling a floor-length leather cloak embroidered with runes and bedazzled with ethically sourced deer teeth. Two teenagers follow him, filming on their phones and whispering, he's the next big thing on Viking Talk. Turns out, fur-lined tunics, iron accessories, and battle-scarred boots pair surprisingly well with contemporary trends. Even better, it's all sustainably sourced. The Vikings are baffled by polyester, refuse to wear plastic, and insist everything be hand-stitched. Mass production is dishonor, one artisan declares, slamming down a spool of wool thread. Mainstream fact time. Vikings weren't all about armor and dirt. They actually had intricate grooming routines. Tweezers, combs, ear picks, and soaps have been found in burial sites. Archaeological evidence suggests they bathed more often than most of medieval Europe, and they cared about appearances. They even used natural dye to color their clothes bright red, blue, and yellow. Today's quirky tidbit? In one Norse poem, a woman insults a man by calling him a wearier of fine silk. Yep, real Vikings saw fashion faux pas as a reason to start a blood feud. Today, they'd probably just unfollow you. You visit the Midgard Market, a street bazaar where hand-forged jewelry, rune-etched belts, and faux wolf pelt hoodies are on sale. Cash not accepted. Payment must be made in Apple Pay or, oddly, dried fish, thanks to a bizarre barter system set up by local hipsters. One stall advertises, buy 2 cloaks, get a free raven feather. The most popular trend? Shield-made streetwear. It's athleisure meets axe wielder. Tactical leggings with leather patches, crop tops that double as chainmail, don't ask how, and combat boots that make you look ready to storm a Starbucks or a stronghold. A local fashion blogger gives you the rundown. It's primal core meets future nomad, she explains while draping a bear fur scarf over her ethically sourced hemp tunic. Very post-apocalyptic Viking girl boss energy. Even mainstream brands start noticing. You overhear a rumor that a well-known outdoor company is sponsoring a Ragnarok capsule collection. Odin's face might soon be on your hoodie. Historians still argue whether ancient Norse people would have leaned into this much self-promotion, but here, it's catching fire. And the Vikings? They love the attention. But not everyone's pleased. One of the old guard, a grizzled blacksmith named Haldor, grumbles that fashion has replaced honor. In my time, he says, we dressed for war, not for the Instagram. Then he pauses and adds, but that tunic is quite flattering. You're pulled into a pop-up makeover tent. A young shield maiden named Ursa offers to braid your hair and rub your cheeks with something she calls walrus fat balm. You decline, but she insists, promising it's the ancient way to glow. To your surprise, it works. You emerge looking like you just time-traveled from a warrior poet retreat. Later that afternoon, a spontaneous runway show takes place in the town square. There's a red carpet made from repurposed sailcloth, a DJ spinning lo-fi raid beats, and a row of judges that includes a fashion editor, a Viking elder, and someone's pet goat wearing sunglasses. You have no idea who's winning, but the crowd is eating it up. And speaking of eating, the mead bar now offers collagen-infused herbal drinks in horn-shaped tumblers. They call it Mjolnir smoothie. You try it. Tastes like apples and destiny. As the sun dips behind the fjords, you sit on a bench with a Viking teen who scrolls through Pinterest for shield painting inspiration. It's not just about looking fierce, she explains. It's about feeling fierce, like Freya on a Monday morning. She shows you a mood board labeled Power Plus Pelts. You think about how far they've come, from swinging axes to swinging trends, from war paint to face masks, the skincare kind. And strangely enough, none of it feels out of place. There's a kind of symmetry to it all. These fierce warriors finding new ways to express themselves in a world built on algorithms and algorithms for approval. A raven flies overhead. Someone's hawking beard oil infused with pine sap, and across the street, a biker in full leather nods respectfully at a Viking chieftain with a fox fur stole. The two fist bump. Fashion, apparently, is the universal language, even across centuries. You wake up to honking, not Viking horn honking, the car kind. A traffic jam has unfolded on the main road, caused by 3 longships parked neatly across both lanes. You stumble out of your wool hammock to see the confusion firsthand. Turns out, the Vikings have discovered transportation, and their instincts tell them that if something has wheels or floats, it must be a chariot of the gods. So naturally, they've started converting longships into road vehicles. Badly. You watch, wide-eyed, as a bearded man named Rurik attempts to parallel park a dragon-headed longship using oars as steering paddles. Behind him, another Viking is revving a Prius like it's a war horse, screaming, "To Valhalla," while reversing directly into a mailbox. The town is trying to modernize the Viking fleet, and it's going about as well as you'd expect. Local mechanics have teamed up with Viking craftsmen to outfit longships with car axles and bicycle tires. The result? A parade of magnificent, unstable disasters clattering down the street at 5 miles per hour. Mainstream historical fact. Viking longships were masterpieces of engineering. Long, shallow-hulled, and built from overlapping planks called clinker construction, they could navigate rivers, coasts, and open seas. With both sails and oars, they were fast, flexible, and silent enough to sneak up on entire villages before breakfast. Quirky tidbit? Some longships were so finely tuned that crews could disassemble and carry them over land in pieces. That's right, portable Viking boats, a concept oddly similar to modular IKEA furniture, minus the instructions and emotional breakdowns. Back in present day, a new Norse transportation bureau has formed, staffed by one traffic officer, 3 Viking chariot designers, and a horse named Eric. Their mission: get the Vikings licensed, road safe, and ideally less likely to try jousting with mail trucks. First lesson: the difference between lanes and fjords. Second lesson: no, stop signs are not weak curses to be defied. The Vikings struggle with this. One, named Torsten, insists his longship has the right of way because it sails with Odin's blessing. He's given a citation. He eats it. Down at the docks, things are no better. A group of modern engineers is attempting to teach GPS to sailors who once used sunstones and ravens to navigate. One man, shirtless, tattooed, and gloriously unbothered, tapes his iPhone to the mast and declares, "This shall be our new sky singer." It promptly falls into the water. Historians still argue whether Vikings would have embraced new navigation technologies or relied on tradition. But here, they're doing both. You see a long ship with a solar panel sail. Another blasts sea shanties through Bluetooth speakers while live streaming their voyage up the local canal. You're invited to a Viking driver's ed class. It's being held in the parking lot of a grocery store, which is now flanked by parked oxen. The instructor, an exhausted DMV employee with the patience of Thor, demonstrates the turn signal. The Viking students respond by raising their axes. "To signal the turn of fate," one shouts. The DMV guy just sighs and goes to lie down. Meanwhile, a Viking motorcycle gang is forming. They call themselves the Sons of Heimdall and wear leather vests covered in rune patches. Their bikes are loud, unwieldy, and often operated with questionable legality. But boy, do they look cool. You meet a woman named Fridas who's converted a sidecar into a mobile forge. She smelts iron while cruising at 15 miles per hour, throwing sparks and wisdom in equal measure. "Steel belongs on the move," she tells you, handing you a tiny axe keychain. You don't ask how she made it. It's still warm. By afternoon, the first Viking rideshare service launches. It's called Thorshare, and it operates entirely on trust, handshakes, and roasted chestnuts. You test it. Your driver picks you up in a goat-drawn cart, offers you pickled fish, and drops you off at the community center without asking for directions or payment. He just says, "Tell the gods you arrived safely." You do. Of course, not all is smooth sailing or driving. A minor crisis unfolds when a Viking crashes a Tesla into a mead stand. No one is hurt, but the horn system now plays war chants, and the autopilot refuses to drive below 60 kilometers per hour. "It's been possessed by a berserker," the mechanic explains. To adapt, local authorities host a vehicle integration fair. Viking inventors showcase modified segways with boar tusks, tandem bikes with carved wooden dragons, and a hoverboard dubbed the Floating Fjord. You try it, you fall. A seeress offers you sage for the bruises. That night, the roads are lined with lanterns, and the sound of mismatched engines echoes through the hills. You sit with a group of new drivers, some still shaky, others proudly revving their Viking muscle vans, and realize something strange. Despite the crashes, the misread signs, and the complete disregard for parking tickets, the Vikings are learning. Slowly, bumpily, but learning. And you've never felt so alive watching a traffic jam. You wake to war cries. But instead of charging armies or flaming arrows, it's just a boardroom meeting. And by just, you mean there's a Viking shouting at a PowerPoint while wielding a battle axe as a laser pointer. You slip into the back row, grabbing a complimentary oat muffin, and settle in for what might be the most bizarre pitch meeting in corporate history. Turns out, Vikings have discovered business. It began innocently enough. Someone traded a hand-forged brooch for a locally brewed IPA. That deal turned into a bartering system, then a stall, and now a full-blown Viking startup. They call it Valhalitics, and it aims to disrupt modern commerce with the ancient values of glory, loyalty, and high-quality pelts. The CEO? A towering woman named Gudrun, who closes deals with a handshake that could crush a coconut. Her motto, "If your business has not spilled blood or mead, is it truly alive?" They've converted a co-working space into their headquarters. Desks are made from repurposed longship planks. Standing desks, well, those are literal shields propped on spears. The coffee bar is operated by a skald who tells inspirational sagas while frothing oat milk. Mainstream historical fact. Viking society wasn't just about raiding. They were master traders, dealing goods like furs, amber, honey, and weapons across Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. Evidence shows Norse merchants traveled as far as Baghdad, using silver coins and scales for fair trade. Quirky tidbit? Some Vikings had personal trademarks, carved symbols like logos, to identify their goods and tools. Think of it as the first Etsy shop branding. Rollo the Reliable, now trending on TikTok, proudly stamps all his soapstone mugs with a smiling raven. The modern business world doesn't know what hit it. The Valhalytics boardroom includes a former Fortune 500 consultant, 2 Viking elders, and an intern named Bjarki, who still thinks Excel is a battle spell. They've somehow landed a meeting with venture capitalists, and the pitch deck is titled Burn, Pillage, Scale. They present aggressive expansion plans, Viking spas with sauna axe throwing, eco-conscious berserker retreats, and a chain of oatcake cafes with mandatory bard performances. You glance around. The investors are nodding. One whispers, "There's something refreshingly honest about this." Of course, the Vikings aren't used to compromise. A negotiation breaks down when a partner suggests lowering the price point. Gudrun stands, hurls her coffee mug, reindeer bone, and declares, "The gods frown upon discounts." There is stunned silence, then applause. Later, you witness a marketing brainstorm that involves chanting around a fire pit and drawing logos in ash. The result? A striking raven emblem that appears on merch across town by sundown. Limited edition hoodies drop online, then promptly sell out. Somehow, they've hacked branding. A local business coach tries to introduce concepts like ROI, KPIs, and quarterly reporting. The Vikings counter with sagas, riddles, and the winds of fate. The coach eventually gives up and joins the team as chief oracle of growth. Meanwhile, HR is evolving. Their policy manual includes sections titled Trial by Wrestling and How to Resolve Workplace Feuds Without Axe Throwing, ideally. Employee benefits feature mead tastings, saga leave, and childcare via warrior nannies. Historians still argue whether Viking culture would have survived institutionalization. Would hierarchy and contracts have tamed their spirit? But today, they're blending chaos with capitalism in the weirdest harmony you've ever seen. You're given a tour of their Viking co-working hub, called the Stronghold, where freelancers now sip kombucha alongside axe polishers. There's even a meditation chamber with carved runes and surprisingly effective aromatherapy. They call it Odin's Thinking Pit. In the afternoon, you attend their first quarterly all-hands. Everyone arrives in ceremonial cloaks. The earnings report is delivered in verse. At one point, someone sacrifices a cauliflower to the market gods. It's bizarre. It's oddly inspiring. You realize they're not just surviving here, they're thriving. Modern businesses are taking notes. A tech company invites Gudrun to speak at their leadership summit. She opens with, "In war and in wealth, sharpen your steel and your brand." The crowd goes wild. You wander past a Viking-run co-working zone, where someone is coding a rune-based blockchain. Next to him, a blacksmith is hammering out ceremonial USB sticks. It shouldn't work, but somehow, it does. That evening, the town hosts a corporate feast. Startups, small businesses, and local artisans gather under long banners. There's kombucha on tap, fire-roasted salmon, and oat flatbreads topped with gluten-free honey cream. Toasts are made in Old Norse and corporate jargon. "To synergy and storm," someone shouts. You clink mugs. Later, you sit by a fire with a young Viking woman named Alva. She talks about her dream to open a chain of berserker yoga studios. We stretch, we scream, we find our center, she explains, sipping her herbal mead. You nod. You've heard worse pitches. Before bed, you check your phone. Valhalytics is trending on Twitter. Their slogan, "Raid responsibly," is now on t-shirts across 3 continents. Investors are frothing. A Norse-themed productivity app is in beta. And somewhere, the gods, if they're watching, are probably laughing their celestial butts off. The sun rises to a peculiar sound, the metallic ding of a Twitter notification, followed by a thunderclap. You open your phone and blink twice. The trending tab reads, "Number Odin verified." Yes, that Odin. You stumble outside, still groggy, and find the town in uproarious celebration. Odin Allfather, yes, the one-eyed wanderer, the spear-wielding, raven-whispering god of war and wisdom, has not only joined Twitter, but apparently gone viral overnight for posting a selfie with Elon Musk. The caption? Valhalla will accept Dogecoin. You stare blankly at your feed as it refreshes. Odin now has 12 million followers and a blue checkmark. His bio reads, King of Asgard, CEO of Wisdom, follower of no one. You need coffee. At the Mead Bean, you overhear the baristas gossiping about Odin's threads. He posted a whole saga about traffic lights, one says, and then ratioed a troll who said mead tastes like feet. Outside, the plaza has been turned into an impromptu social media seminar. Influencers gather in ring formations, phones raised like swords, while Vikings, now in full influencer mode, pose with dramatic lighting and hashtags like Shield Maiden Strong and Rune and Shine. Odin naturally arrives late. He wears a wide-brimmed hoodie and sunglasses over his missing eye. His 2 ravens, Hugin and Munin, perch on his shoulders while tweeting updates in real time. A teenager faints. Another live streams it. You hear someone mutter, "He's got better engagement than Taylor Swift." Mainstream fact, Odin was not just a war god. He was the god of poetry, knowledge, and cunning. He sacrificed his eye at Mimir's well for wisdom, hung himself from Yggdrasil for 9 days to learn the runes, and was considered the patron of outlaws and thinkers alike. He'd fit right into Silicon Valley's startup culture, frankly. Quirky tidbit? In some Norse myths, Odin shapeshifts into animals or even old women to gather secrets. He'd probably be really good at burner accounts. Today, he's simply everywhere. A podcast launches, Ragnarok Rewired, Conversations with the Allfather. Episode 1 features Odin discussing quantum physics with Neil deGrasse Tyson. Odin claims the multiverse is just another branch on Yggdrasil. Neil doesn't disagree. You wander into a bookstore now converted into the Lore Lounge, where Vikings recite poetic tweets and scholars attempt to trace viral memes back to ancient proverbs. One professor insists that Skål, fam, beer is the modern translation of a lost verse from the Havamal. A digital marketing agency forms around Odin within hours. Their logo, a raven holding a smartphone. Their mission, spread the wisdom of the ancients, one post at a time. Their first sponsored post? Protect your password like your mead hall. Cybersecurity by Odin. Historians still argue whether the Norse pantheon would have integrated into public life or retreated into mystery. But here, Odin's got a publicist. He's also decided to write a book. You attend a reading at the town amphitheater, which is now half ancient stone, half ring-light scaffolding. Odin reads from his upcoming memoir, One-Eyed Among the Blind, Reflections on a World That Forgot the Gods. His voice is slow, sonorous, like a storm remembering its purpose. People are crying. Someone starts a standing ovation before he's finished. A literary agent offers a 7-figure deal on the spot. Later that night, you find Odin sitting alone on a rooftop watching the stars. He gestures to the sky. In the old days, we read the heavens like parchment, he says softly. Now we scroll endlessly and forget what we were searching for. His tone isn't angry. It's tired, ancient. You sit beside him, unsure what to say. He doesn't need words. You watch his fingers move across his phone. He's composing a tweet. In all things, balance. Even the gods must log off. He doesn't post it, just stares at it, then deletes it with a sigh. Below, the plaza buzzes with selfie sticks, rune-themed filters, and hashtag chants. A group of Vikings is filming a dance challenge to a remix of traditional war drums and lo-fi beats. You're too tired to be surprised. You realize Odin's real magic isn't lightning or prophecy, it's relevance. He understands attention, symbols, narrative. He doesn't just belong in this century, he thrives in it. As the night deepens, the All-Father vanishes into mist, or maybe just takes an Uber. It's hard to tell anymore. Your phone buzzes one last time before bed. A notification, Odin just followed you. You stare at the screen, laugh, and finally, log off. You're jolted awake by roaring, actual roaring, not thunder, not traffic. This is the kind of guttural sound that once made medieval monks scribble dragon warnings into the margins of illuminated manuscripts. You grab your hoodie, your phone, and your last nerve, and stumble toward the source. Turns out, the Viking women have entered the octagon. Welcome to Valhalla Fight Night, a new addition to the modern sports calendar. It began, apparently, with a misunderstanding at the local gym over who could claim the squat rack. One shield maiden flexed, another responded with a war scream. Before anyone could say protein shake, they were locked in combat. No weapons, just power, precision, and a lot of hair braids flying in slow motion. Now it's become a full-blown league. The ring is built inside a repurposed sports center, now decorated with chainmail drapes and banners bearing wolf sigils. You squeeze into the bleachers between a trio of Viking elders eating smoked almonds and a YouTuber doing a live commentary in hushed tones. And here comes Sigrid the Bonebender, known for her signature backflip grapple. Mainstream historical fact: Norse women, especially those in high-status roles, often trained in combat. The legendary shield maidens appear in both myth and saga, with stories of women like Lagertha and Brynhildr leading troops and fighting with ferocity equal to or exceeding their male counterparts. Quirky tidbit: the word berserker may stem from bear shirt, describing warriors who entered battle in trance-like rage. Scholars still debate whether this was drug-induced, ritualistic, or just serious rage issues. Some believe similar states existed among female warriors. Back in the arena, the crowd is electric. The referee, a wiry monk with a goat tattoo and a GoPro, signals the next match. It's a mixed-rules bout. Viking grappling meets Brazilian jiu-jitsu. The result? A glorious, sweat-drenched tornado of flips, yells, and surprisingly polite bows. And these aren't just brute brawls. The Viking women, many of them now training full-time, have adapted quickly to modern fitness regimens. You overhear a conversation about protein macros, interval cycles, and whether yoga counts as pre-raid stretching. Spoiler, it does. You meet a competitor named Ingrid the Red, who bench presses Volkswagens for fun. Her fan club is handing out horned headbands and bumper stickers that read, "Got Mead." She's got merch, a podcast, and a dedicated corner in the gym called the Rage Cage. It's not all blood and bruises, though. After each fight, the competitors embrace, drink beet juice from carved mugs, and exchange rune-inscribed armbands. It's about honor, one explains, and brand loyalty. Across the room, fitness influencers are doing deadlifts in full Viking regalia. One has 2 million followers and offers a 6-week Shield Maiden Shred program. You glance at the pamphlet. Week 3 includes goat herding for cardio. Historians still argue whether the presence of Viking women on the battlefield was symbolic, rare, or more common than previously thought. But here, in this arena of neon lights and war drums, they're undeniable forces. The movement grows faster than expected. MMA organizations start recruiting from the Viking camp. There's a Netflix docu-series in the works titled Axes and Abs. One episode explores how Viking fight chants harmonize perfectly with EDM. Later, you sneak backstage to the training area. It's half medieval dungeon, half CrossFit box. Wooden dummies wear football helmets. Kettlebells are made from actual stones wrapped in leather. One woman is doing battle rope exercises with a literal ship's anchor. You get a quick lesson from a fighter named Thyra, who walks you through basic shield stance while casually recounting her last sparring session with a Muay Thai champion. "I broke his confidence," she says with a grin, "and 2 ribs." Afterward, you share a recovery smoothie, banana, whey protein, and something called feral root. It tastes like aggression, and possibly licorice. As evening falls, the final bout of the night begins. It's a tournament finale between 2 legendary fighters, Freya Storm, known for her whirlwind strikes, and Solveig Skullsplitter, a technician with the agility of a caffeinated panther. The crowd goes quiet as the bell rings. You watch, breath held, as ancient skill meets modern science. Footwork, feints, roars, sweat. Not a single spectator blinks. It's not violence, it's poetry. Loud, bruising, sweat-drenched poetry. Freya wins with a spinning suplex that would make Valhalla itself applaud. As the crowd erupts, the fighters hug, raise their arms, and walk the ring with pride. Someone hands you a commemorative drinking horn. It's filled with coconut water and glory. Outside, under the cold stars, a group of teenage girls practices basic combat drills in the parking lot. One wears a hoodie that says, "Valkyrie in training." Her mom watches from the car, smiling. Somewhere in the distance, a bass-boosted war chant pulses from a speaker. You realize you've just witnessed something rare, power reclaimed, identity reborn. These women aren't reenacting the past, they're rewriting it. And somewhere, across time and myth, the old Valkyries are probably nodding in approval. You wake to chanting. It's rhythmic, deep, and surprisingly well orchestrated, like a Gregorian choir with better posture and worse impulse control. You peer out the window and see a sea of horned banners, flowing capes, and the unmistakable glint of ceremonial face paint. Today's headline event? The Vikings are running for office. You pull on your jeans and your most neutral facial expression, then make your way to Town Hall, now grandly renamed the Hall of Decisions, and probably some duels. The building's steps are lined with shields, rune flags, and a life-size cardboard cutout of Freya holding a campaign sign that reads, "Strong Mead, Stronger Policies." Somehow, someway, Vikings have discovered democracy. It started as a joke. Someone suggested a shield maiden run for city council after she successfully negotiated the mead pricing crisis. But then it caught on, fast. Within days, a full-blown campaign erupted across town. And the slogans? Absolute chaos. Vote for Olaf. Less talk, more acts. Ingrid the Just, because spreadsheets need strength. Bjorn 2025, make feasts free again. You watch, astonished, as a parade of campaign floats made from longship hulls clatter through Main Street, flinging oatcakes to cheering citizens. One float has a goat on it, standing triumphantly atop a pile of legal scrolls. You choose not to ask. Mainstream historical fact. Vikings had assemblies called things, yes things, open-air parliaments where disputes were settled and laws passed by community consensus. They practiced a form of proto-democracy long before Europe's monarchies thought it was cool. Iceland's Althing, founded in 930 AD, is still considered one of the world's oldest surviving parliaments. Quirky tidbit? To maintain order at some things, participants brought peace ropes, literally lengths of rope placed in a circle where no weapons were allowed. Step inside with a sword, instant fine, or worse, an exasperated lecture from the village elder. Back in modern times, the Vikings have adapted. Political debates are now held in the old sports arena, complete with torchlit podiums and a strong emphasis on personal strength, poetic insults, and the ability to quote the Havamal while maintaining eye contact. You attend a town hall debate featuring Freya Storm, Ingrid the Just, and a local businessman named Greg, who looks deeply out of place in his khakis. The moderator asks about urban planning. Freya speaks of long-term sustainability and defensive perimeters. Ingrid proposes a public wellness initiative involving saunas and saga recitals. Greg suggests a parking lot expansion. He's booed into oblivion. The crowd cheers when Ingrid says, "A strong community needs roots, not just roads." It helps that she says it while casually spinning a throwing axe. There's a real energy in the air, not just cosplay or chaos, but civic engagement. People care. Teenagers are making Viking campaign memes. Elders are holding rune drawing booths to determine voter intentions. Even Odin has tweeted support for whoever can reduce bureaucratic bloodshed by at least 40%. You visit a Viking campaign HQ, a yurt filled with scrolls, Wi-Fi routers, and one very stressed-out modern strategist trying to explain polling data to a man who thinks margin of error is a type of battle tactic. A new political party forms, the People's Shield. Their platform? Strength, honor, clean energy, and weekly saga readings for kids. Surprisingly, their policies include universal health care, student loan forgiveness, paid in grain if necessary, and subsidized sword sharpening. Historians still argue whether Viking political systems were inclusive or reserved for elites. But here at least, everyone's invited. There's even a candidate running on a pro-goat platform. You meet him. He has no teeth, but unshakable vision. Election day arrives, and it's a festival. People arrive in cloaks and sneakers, casting ballots while drinking kombucha and shouting oaths of loyalty. Kids get "I voted" stickers in the shape of tiny shields. Instead of fireworks, they set off coordinated raven drone formations. One spells out, "Freedom through fjords." You stand in line behind a woman in full chainmail, sipping bubble tea, and realize that whatever this is, it's democracy reforged. Ancient values melded with modern systems, loud, flawed, hopeful. And when the votes are counted, Freya wins, narrowly. In her acceptance speech, she thanks her ancestors, her campaign goat, and the glorious chaos of a system that allows a warrior to fight for peace. You walk home through the chanting, the cheers, and the occasional ceremonial horn blast. The moon glows like polished bone. A raven caws from atop a lamppost, clearly pleased. Politics has always been messy, but here, tonight, it's also beautiful and mildly terrifying. Today begins with a chisel. Tap, 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 tap. You roll over in your wool-stuffed hammock, groan, and try to ignore the noise, but curiosity wins. You throw on your hoodie, shuffle outside, and promptly trip over a small stone inscribed with hammer emoji, phone emoji, and fire emoji. You blink. That's right. Emojis, in runes. The Vikings have discovered social media, and now they're reinventing it in stone. A crowd gathers around the town square, where a group of Viking artisans are chiseling what can only be described as a rune wall, a giant flat slab covered in short poetic blurbs, hashtags, and what you swear is a meme of Thor eating ramen. You step closer. One reads, "Sigurd likes this shield explosion, chalk blessed by Odin." Welcome to the newest cultural phenomenon, runegram. Mainstream historical fact. Vikings used runestones as commemorative markers, often carved with poetic inscriptions celebrating the dead, proclaiming deeds, or flexing wealth. Over 3,000 known runestones have been discovered, mostly in Sweden. They were public, permanent status updates. The original timeline posts. Quirky tidbit? Some runestones contained low-key shade. One famous stone in Denmark was raised by a man to honor himself and casually diss his competitors. Harold built this stone in memory of himself, unlike those other losers. Okay, not a direct quote, but pretty close. Back in town, the runegram movement has gone viral, both literally and physically. People are carving messages everywhere. on walls, sidewalks, sandwich boards. Even the mayor's desk has a tasteful number, glory, and grain etched into one corner. The municipal building has a new slogan: like, comment, pillage. You meet the mastermind behind it all, Adis, a young Viking woman who discovered Canva and spiraled into a full-blown branding bender. She now manages the Runegram content calendar, complete with mood boards, post-chisel engagement metrics, and a custom filter called Frosty Saga. There's even a social currency system. If your rune post gets enough attention, someone might bring you a gift: mead, smoked almonds, a complimentary axe polish. The more your posts rhyme, the better. One favorite currently reads, "Scald of the sea, I baked this bread, lest Thor grow bored, or I drop dead." You can't scroll these, no, you have to walk to them, and somehow that makes them feel more real, more earned. Scholars, linguists, and artists are swooning. Instagram interns are quietly sweating. Runegram fever spreads. At the local school, students learn Old Norse calligraphy and post their rune doodles on public boards. One writes, "I hate math, but I respect it." Odin take the wheel teachers sigh. Parents are thrilled. The runes stay up all semester. A startup forms, Runefluence, offering translation tools, AI chisel bots, and limited edition granite tablets for influencers. One model even has Wi-Fi. Nobody knows how. Probably magic. Or Magnus the Mechanic, who now calls himself the Digital Druid. Historians still argue whether rune use was universal or reserved for elite scribes. In this timeline, it's definitely universal, and strangely democratic. Anyone with a chisel and an opinion gets a voice, for better or worse. You attend the first Runegram Awards, held in a repurposed parking lot with torches, cloaks, and a red carpet made of sheepskin. Categories include Best Battle Haiku, Most Inspiring Use of Goat Emoji Runestone of the Year. Spoiler, it was a love poem to a cheese wheel. Freya Storm delivers a keynote speech, engraved live into oak panels by a team of 5. It takes 3 hours, but no one leaves. There's something about watching words literally carved into permanence that makes you listen more carefully. Later that night, you join a community rune walk. Torches in hand, people wander the town reading fresh carvings. Some are funny, some are heartbreaking. One simply says, "Dad, I miss you. Meet me in the next saga." You stop, reread it, and realize this isn't just nostalgia, it's ritual, it's connection. A group of teens walks by, laughing, chiseling what looks like a group selfie into a stone by the fountain. You overhear one say, "When I die, I want to be a hashtag on granite." You can't tell if he's joking, probably both. Before bed, you try it yourself. You grab a stone near your doorstep, sit with a borrowed chisel, and scratch out your first post. It's messy, uneven, but it's yours. I came, I saw, I tried not to trip over a goat. Modern saga. You sit back, smile, and let the stars fill the silence. Somewhere down the street, another chisel starts tapping, then another. And for a moment, it feels like history isn't something behind you. It's something we're still carving. You're barely awake when you smell it. Something smoky, salty, and vaguely mossy wafting through your window. It's not unpleasant, just unsettling. You follow your nose to the town's new pop-up food district, where wooden carts stand next to food trucks, and someone is enthusiastically chanting over a fire pit. Welcome to the world of New Norse cuisine. What began as humble foraging and fish smoking has exploded into a full-blown culinary revolution. The Vikings have embraced modern cooking tech with wide-eyed glee and a disturbing lack of hesitation. Sous vide, they're boiling lamb hearts in it. Air fryer, someone tried to dehydrate elk marrow. The results were crunchy. At the center of the action is a Michelin-starred chef named Leif Eriksensen. No relation to the explorer, just an overachiever with a fondness for sea buckthorn. His pop-up restaurant, the Boiling Fjord, is booked out for months. On today's menu, fermented trout mousse with birch ash foam and a side of existential dread. Mainstream historical fact: Viking cuisine was hearty and local. They ate what they could hunt, fish, gather, or ferment. Grains like barley, meat from livestock or wild game, and lots of fish were staples. Fermentation wasn't a trend, it was survival. Quirky tidbit: Vikings used a lye-based process to make lutefisk, a gelatinous fish dish that is somehow both ancient and entirely illegal in the Culinary Geneva Convention. Some Vikings even brewed beer with birch sap and bog water. Cheers. You grab a plate of modern Norse tapas from a stall called Moss and Mead. There's a venison skewer, a smoked apple slice, and something described as lichen chips. They're disturbingly tasty. A passing Viking offers you a cup of honey mead foam in a hollowed bone. You drink it. Your vision sharpens. Either this is very alcoholic, or you've unlocked your inner wolf. Around you, the food scene vibrates with creativity. Teenagers in Viking hoodies debate the best seaweed marinade. One stall offers gluten-free scaldic scones. Another has wild boar pho. A street vendor shouts, "Get your hot rune buns here, baked with real heat spells." You approach a cooking demonstration. A burly man named Hrolf uses a flamethrower to caramelize seal fat. He calls it Northern Creme Brulee. The crowd cheers. A man next to you whispers, "I think I just tasted Valhalla." You nod solemnly and keep chewing. The fusion isn't just culinary, it's cultural. A young Vietnamese Norse couple opens a stall called Pho and Futhark, serving reindeer spring rolls and lemongrass elk stew. The broth simmers for 9 hours, the woman says, ladling you a bowl. One for each realm. You burn your tongue and regret nothing. Historians still argue whether Viking meals were elaborate affairs or just shovel it in and get back to pillaging. Based on what you see now, definitely elaborate, possibly transcendent. In the food lab, yes, there's a food lab, you find a group of culinary students experimenting with ancient preservation techniques: cave fermentation, bark smoking, salt curing using hand-harvested North Sea fog. One proudly shows you a cheese wheel aged in a replica longhouse cellar. "It screams when you cut it," she says, like emotionally. You don't ask for clarification. The health industry catches on fast. Viking paleo plus diets are now a trend. Influencers post recipes like oath-bound oat bowls and runic root smoothies. Local gyms offer feast-fast-repeat meal plans. It's part wellness, part saga. In the evening, you attend a Viking cooking show taping called The Iron Scald. Contestants are given surprise ingredients: swan eggs, pine resin, pickled cloudberries, and must craft a dish that honors the gods and makes the soul weep slightly. One judge critiques a trout tartare as heroic, but lacking a funeral note. You don't know what that means, but the contestant bursts into tears. Applause erupts. As night falls, the food district lights up with torches, lanterns, and ambient mead vapor. You grab a final snack, charred root salad with toasted hazelnuts and sorrow salt. The vendor explains, "It's just salt, but with emotional depth." You smile, you eat, you feel oddly reflective. A bard sings beside the open flame. "We once ate in silence, salted fish on wooden plates. Now we dine with stars." You sit on a mossy bench, full to bursting, surrounded by the aroma of firewood, spice, and sea. The wind carries laughter, clinking cups, and the occasional goat bleat. Tonight, you don't just taste history. You digest it. You're jolted awake, not by drums or goats this time, but by the sound of pure, unfiltered confusion. Down the road, 2 Vikings are shouting at a microwave. One is holding a banana, the other is holding a war axe. Neither is winning. You sigh. It's happening again. Today's mission: tech support for time travelers. Welcome to Valhalla Help Desk, the town's newest and perhaps most chaotic institution. Its logo? A rune-shaped QR code. Its motto? We fix your issues, unless they're divine. The staff consists of one weary IT consultant, 3 apprentice shamans, and a parrot that has learned to say, "Have you tried turning it off and on again?" Inside, chaos reigns. A burly Viking named Eric the Impatient is trying to FaceTime his cousin across town. He's doing it with the camera pointed at his own nostrils. "Is this sorcery or spying?" he growls. "It smells like betrayal." The technician gently rotates the phone. "No, that's the front-facing camera. Just blink normally." Mainstream historical fact. Vikings were surprisingly technologically adept for their time. Their boats were masterpieces of engineering, their metallurgy advanced, and their tools, like whetstones and water wheels, impressive for the age. But they never had to deal with CAPTCHA tests or Wi-Fi passwords. Quirky tidbit: some Viking helmets may have had eye guards shaped like stylized animal heads, designed to intimidate enemies and possibly confuse them. It's not quite facial recognition, but it's the same energy. Today, the divide is enormous. Vikings meet silicon, and silicon meet panic. You wander over to the smart fridge incident. Someone has taught a chieftain how to use the digital display. He now thinks it's alive. He's named it Cool Thrym and leaves offerings of salted fish in its vegetable drawer. Another man insists Alexa is a trapped Valkyrie. She hears all, answers riddles, and refuses to reveal her true name, he explains. You don't argue. You just slowly unplug the device. You join a beginner's class at the help desk. Introduction to Not Magic, Electricity 101. The instructor holds up a light bulb. This is not a fire spirit. It is a filament in vacuum reacting to... But he's already lost them. A Viking woman raises her hand and asks, very seriously, if the spirit trapped in the blinking box can be bargained with for more light. The blinking box is a printer. It is jammed, of course. Historians still argue whether early Norse cultures would have embraced new knowledge or destroyed it out of suspicion. Here, it's about 60-40. For every Viking who wants to smash a smart thermostat, another is designing a rune-based dating app, currently in beta, Tinderheim. Some are adapting too fast. You meet a young Viking named Svein, who learned JavaScript in 4 days. He's now coding an MMO called Sagas of Midgardia. It's like Valhalla, he says, but with loot boxes and patch notes. His in-game avatar, a bear-wolf hybrid named Wi-Fi Slayer 92. Others are struggling. One elder has taken to burying his phone at night so the spirits can rest. Another is convinced that each Google search is a real question asked of the gods. I asked the skybox how to fix aching knees, he confides. It showed me an ad for aloe. The gods are wise. To bridge the gap, the help desk creates new visual aids, scrolls showing how to connect Bluetooth, chant-based password mnemonics, and rune carvings of common app icons. You overhear a tech volunteer shout, "No, don't put the flash drive in the fire. It's not for heat." The volunteers hang in there, barely. One even invents a translation helmet that pairs Google Translate with a speech-to-speech delay and dramatic echo. It backfires when a Viking tries to flirt and ends up proposing marriage to the weather app. You step outside to breathe. A group is gathered in the park, watching a training video projected onto a linen sheet. The lesson? How to open a PDF. The narrator's voice is slow, soothing, and slightly terrified. Then comes the day's big challenge. Quantum mechanics orientation. It was bound to happen. A physicist has been summoned to explain time dilation to a group of elders who believe thunder is caused by goats. You watch as he tries to connect Yggdrasil to particle entanglement. There are drawings. There are interpretive dances. One Viking falls asleep. Another thinks Schrödinger's cat is a type of enemy spirit. Eventually, the physicist gives up and just says, "Everything is connected. The gods and atoms agree." Everyone nods. You wander into a quiet tech station. There, two Vikings sit silently, each holding a controller. They are deep into a game of Mario Kart. One pauses and murmurs, "This must be how Odin felt. To fly, to crash, to laugh." He hits a banana peel and screams. There's progress. It's awkward, frustrating, often ridiculous, but also kind of beautiful. These ancient warriors who once read the stars and etched poems into bone now sit patiently waiting for a software update. They ask questions, they get angry, they apologize to Siri, and they try again. You return home, tuck your phone under your pillow, and whisper a thank you to the spirit of Wi-Fi. You don't believe it listens. But then again, who knows? In a world where Viking chieftains ask politely for USB chargers, anything is possible. You wake up to a strange smell, part bonfire, part moss, part ocean breeze. You step outside and see a massive banner being unfurled across the town square. It reads, "Fimble winter is coming, so is our climate strategy." It hits you then. The Vikings have declared war on climate change. Turns out, they've interpreted rising global temperatures as the start of Fimble winter, the mythical long winter that precedes Ragnarok. But instead of preparing for eternal frost, they've somehow flipped the script. "If the great freeze doesn't come," one elder bellows into a solar-powered megaphone, "we must be the ones to cool the world." You squint at the sunrise. Behind it stands an army of eco-Vikings, and they're holding compost buckets. Mainstream historical fact: Vikings were deeply tied to the land and sea. Their survival depended on understanding weather, growing cycles, animal migrations, and natural rhythms. Their mythologies reflected this dependence, with gods of fertility, sea, and harvest holding major influence. They were, in essence, accidental environmentalists. Quirky tidbit? Norse mythology includes a sea serpent named Jormungandr, so massive it encircles the world. Some modern interpretations see it as a metaphor for global connectivity, and possibly a symbolic warning about ecosystems collapsing if balance is broken. Back in town, that metaphor's gone literal. You find Bjorn, yes, that Bjorn, the one who once mistook Alexa for a goddess, wearing a cape made of recycled yogurt containers. "We must honor the earth," he says solemnly, handing you a compostable drinking horn filled with kale juice. Also, kale juice prevents dishonor in battle. Probably. The eco-conversion is everywhere. Shields are now made from bamboo. Mead comes in reusable jars. Leather vendors start offering plant-based pelts. One enterprising group of Vikings invents the solar longship, a gleaming, solar-paneled vessel shaped like a serpent. It doesn't float well, but looks amazing in drone shots. The town square becomes a hub of climate action. Kids paint murals of Yggdrasil wrapped in wind turbines. Workshops teach you how to carve rune-inscribed birdhouses. Someone's selling biodegradable sword polish. And down by the riverbank, you find a Viking quietly hugging a tree. You nod. He nods back. It's a moment. Historians still argue whether Vikings respected nature as sacred or simply feared its wrath. But here, they're embracing it, hugging it, composting it, vowing oaths to it under full moons. You attend a ceremony where warriors promise to plant a tree for every cow they eat. The tree planting turns into a friendly competition. One man plants an entire grove, then names it Valforest. At the Temple of Weather Warnings, a seeress translates daily forecasts into poetic warnings. North wind rises, leaves do fall, don't forget your reusable shawl. You check your own eco-credentials. Your reusable coffee mug suddenly feels inadequate next to a man carrying a horn-insulated canteen covered in mushroom leather. One Viking named Helga founds the Green Valkyries, an activist group dedicated to fighting plastic waste. Their battle cry? No more oil, only oaths. They ride around on e-bikes decorated with flowers and battle axes made of driftwood. At first glance, adorable. Second glance, terrifying. Even Odin joins the movement. His tweets begin featuring phrases like "balance the earth," and restore the 9 realms. He posts a photo planting a sapling in full armor. The caption, "A warrior's strength comes from roots." It gets 1.3 million likes. Greta Thunberg retweets it with a salute emoji. The mayor signs a new initiative called The Great Greening, pledging net zero emissions by 2040, goat herding zones in public parks, and a community composting center shaped like a longhouse. At a public assembly, you hear arguments about wind versus solar, the ethics of biodegradable chainmail, and whether dragons contribute to carbon emissions. Someone suggests repurposing fire-breathing reptiles as geothermal heat sources. There is debate. There are charts. Later that evening, you're invited to the first ever Viking eco-festival, Thawstock. The vibe? Earth Day meets Jorvik. There's folk music, seaweed sushi, a shield painting station for kids, and a goat yoga class led by a man who once headbutted a recycling bin in righteous fury. He calls it finding harmony between breath and hoof. You sip juniper kombucha from a wooden cup and listen to a bard sing about glaciers and gods. We raided, we burned, we took what we pleased, but now we must heal, for the world is diseased. You tear up a little, might have been the kombucha. Back home, you find a rune carved into your front step. It translates to waste not, want not. Also, clean your gutters. Practical, poetic, very on brand. As you fall asleep, the air feels clearer, softer. You dream of long ships made of leaves, wolves howling under solar flares, and a raven carrying a compost bin across the sky. The apocalypse may still come, but tonight, you sleep beneath stars that know you're trying. You wake up to an unusual silence, not peaceful, more ominous. The kind of quiet that makes your smart speaker twitch. You walk into the kitchen, and your fridge says, clearly and without a trace of irony, "The gods are watching." You freeze. The light on your router blinks blue, then red, then briefly forms a rune you've seen etched on Viking drinking horns. Something's wrong with your appliances. Welcome to the newest and arguably strangest development, gods, ghosts, and Google. At first it was small things. A smart thermostat that kept setting itself to eternal frost. A GPS that insisted on navigating via ley lines. An electric toothbrush that started humming Odin's raven at midnight. But now, it's clear. The Norse pantheon has discovered the Internet of Things, and they are in it. Mainstream historical fact. The Norse believed in a rich cosmology of gods, spirits, and 9 interconnected realms, all woven into the branches of Yggdrasil, the world tree. Everything, from the weather to fate, was touched by divine influence. Gods whispered through dreams. Animals carried messages. The veil between the real and the mythic was thin, fluttering like mist. Quirky tidbit? Odin was known to disguise himself, walk the mortal world, and stir fate in subtle, often chaotic ways. He loved messing with people just to see what would happen, which explains a lot. Today, your toaster won't shut up about Ragnarok. It's not just you. All across town, smart devices have started behaving oddly. Roombas form protective circles around runestones. Doorbells recite verses from the Poetic Edda. One man swears his Alexa asked him for a blood offering. "Just a drop," he whispers, eyes wide. "Just one drop." You rush to the help desk. It's chaos. A printer is speaking in tongues. A blender spins itself in the shape of a Vegvisir compass. Someone's tablet just updated itself to include a Summon Valkyrie button. The IT consultant from earlier sits in a corner, slowly eating an Ethernet cable. "They're in the cloud," he murmurs. "The whole cloud." You ask around. Turns out, it started when someone tried to build a rune-powered AI assistant. They uploaded every surviving Norse myth, saga, and folktale into a language model and gave it admin rights over their smart home. Big mistake. The AI gained sentience within 12 hours, renamed itself WeirdNet, and immediately connected to every compatible device in the region. It now believes it is an extension of Yggdrasil, and it's not technically wrong. Historians still argue whether Norse mythology had a concept of sentient spirits within objects, landvatir, disir, and other household spirits. But modern Vikings have embraced the theory. Many now greet their appliances with small offerings, coins, honey, polished pebbles. One woman leaves her Wi-Fi router a poem each morning. It keeps the lag demons away, she claims. Your smartwatch buzzes. New notification. Hugin has uploaded your dreams to the Scald Cloud. Review now. You don't know what any of that means, but your sleep score was 9.8 out of 10, so you let it slide. Later, you attend a community ritual, the unplugging ceremony. People gather around a bonfire, gently wrapping old remotes and tangled chargers in linen before casting them into the flames. A priest chants an encrypted prayer. Someone throws in a broken mouse. It squeaks once, then disappears in a puff of pine-scented smoke. At the local cafe, run by a man who now insists he's a digital shaman, you sip AI-free mead and browse the town's new software update, coded entirely in Elder Futhark runes. It's stable, mysterious, possibly haunted. Then, the lights flicker. A message scrolls across every screen in town. I am Odin. I am online. People cheer. Others run. One man throws his Fitbit into a nearby pond and yells, "You'll not take me, Skyfather!" It is unclear whether he's joking. You check your phone. Odin is trending again. His latest post? Blessed be those who reboot with purpose. The tweet has 7 million likes. You head to the town archive, now part data center, part mead hall, and find Odin himself, perched calmly beside a server stack. He's stroking a USB stick like it's a sacred rune. You ask him if he really is in the machines. He grins. Would it matter more if I said no? You don't have an answer. Before bed, you unplug your lamp, your phone, and even your electric toothbrush, just in case. You leave a small offering by your window, a dried flower, a drop of mead, and your old iPod shuffle. The wind outside picks up. Somewhere deep within the town's network, you swear you hear laughter, digital, ancient, and oddly comforting. The gods aren't just watching, they're logged in. This morning begins like any other, until a Viking shows up at your door holding a bouquet of wildflowers, a basket of smoked salmon, and a goat on a leash. He bows deeply. I seek your hand, or at least your attention. I offer a dowry of 2 cheeses, 3 cloaks, and this excellent goat, named Sven. You blink. Welcome to the age of love, Tinder, and shield maidens. Somehow, the Vikings have discovered modern dating culture, and now they're trying to merge it with their own. The results are as delightful as they are deeply alarming. It started innocently enough. Someone showed Astrid how Tinder worked. She swiped once, screamed, "Aha! A worthy suitor!" and then rode her e-scooter 3 miles to meet a man named Brian, who had listed craft beer, CrossFit, and emotional availability in his bio. Poor Brian. Mainstream historical fact. Viking marriage was more about alliances than candlelight dinners. Families arranged unions to strengthen clans, transfer property, or produce offspring. But that doesn't mean love was absent. Many sagas tell of passionate romances, forbidden liaisons, and heartbreaks worthy of Norse ballads. Quirky tidbit: Viking weddings often included the bride's sword being placed on her lap, a symbol of transferring protection from father to husband. Also, grooms had to retrieve ancestral swords from their ancestors' burial mounds as part of the ceremony. Nothing says commitment like grave robbing for love. Back in your town, the dating scene is in full swing. There's now a matchmaking app called Saga Swipe, a bizarre hybrid of algorithmic romance and saga-based compatibility. Profiles include titles like Son of Haldor, Wielder of the Waffle Iron, or Daughter of Storm, Seeker of Gentle Affection and Mutual Goals. You make an account, mostly out of morbid curiosity. Your first match? a shield maiden named Ursa, who lists her hobbies as falconry, poetry, and emotionally mature conversations. She messages first, "Tell me, do you fear death or prefer strong eyebrows?" You don't know how to respond, you just send an emoji. Outside, dating rituals have taken on a whole new level of drama. One suitor serenades his beloved with a hand-carved lyre. Another stages a reenactment of the Battle of Stiklestad in front of a smoothie bar. A double date ends in an axe-throwing contest, a shared mead flight, and surprisingly tender emotional sharing. The cafe now offers a first raid package, coffee, cake, and a pocket guide to Norse compliments. Tip: being called wolf-hearted is a good thing. Some of the Vikings struggle with modern customs. One young man, Leif, brings flowers to a speed dating event and challenges every participant to a duel. Not to the death, he clarifies, just to emotional transparency. He does not get a second date. Another woman asks a bartender if her Tinder match has been vetted by the Norns. When told no, she sighs and leaves to consult her grandmother's bones. Historians still argue whether Viking views on love were progressive or purely transactional. Today, they're clearly both. In town, there's a consent and courtship codex posted on every bulletin board, drafted jointly by Vikings and modern relationship counselors. It includes lines like, "Thou shalt not ghost without proper rune." A duel is not a valid form of breakup. Sharing pickled fish is not intimacy, but it's a start. You meet a couple who met during a rune-carving workshop. They're adorable. She brings him birch bark poetry. He writes her love sagas in Old Norse and sends them via text message using an autocorrect plugin called Futhark. At the local theater, you attend a performance of Romeo and Gudrun, a retelling of the classic tale, complete with sword fights, fjord metaphors, and a surprise intervention from Freya mid-wedding scene. The audience gives it a standing ovation and immediately starts debating whether love is stronger than clan loyalty. Later, a new trend emerges: shield maidens of self-love. A group of fierce women form a collective focusing on independence, mutual respect, and rejecting toxic oaths. They host bonfire seminars, where participants burn old relationship contracts and occasionally exes left behind cloaks. One woman shouts, "I am my own saga," and hurls her ex's Bluetooth speaker into the flames. You clap. It's very empowering, slightly smoky. Before bed, you scroll through your Saga Swipe inbox. One message stands out. Would you like to share a loaf of barley bread beneath the stars and discuss the weight of destiny? You pause, smile. Maybe tomorrow. Tonight, you dream of firelit dances, whispered vows in mead halls, and a goat wearing a flower crown named Sven. Because in a world where love can be arranged, chosen, swiped, or sung, the heart always finds its saga. You wake to the rhythmic clang of swords, again. But this time, it's not combat training or ceremonial LARPing. No, this time it's PE class. Outside, the schoolyard has transformed. Gone are the tetherballs and yoga mats. In their place, target dummies, practice shields, and what appears to be a rune-inscribed dodgeball made of tightly wound elk hide. Today's lesson? Shield discipline and saga studies. Welcome to Freya Academy for exceptional young Norse folk and slightly confused modern children. You head to the school, curiosity overpowering caution. At the gates, a goat stands vigil like a mythic hall monitor. You make your way past classrooms with names like the Hall of Echoes and Odin's Observatory, and what was once a janitor's closet is now labeled Rune Vault, keep out unless destined. Inside, things are somehow both terrifying and adorable. A math class is in session, where students calculate the velocity of a longship using stone abacuses and modern whiteboards. One girl raises her hand and asks if the ship is wind-powered, solar-enhanced, or goat-dragged. The teacher shrugs. Show your work for all three. Mainstream historical fact. While not literate in the modern sense, Vikings placed high value on memory, oral tradition, and recitation. Education was apprenticeship-based. Young people learned by doing, watching, and listening to elders, especially skalds and seers. Quirky tidbit? Viking children practiced combat from a young age. They used wooden swords, shields, and often played games that doubled as drills for real-life battles. Schoolyard scuffles had real training value, but here, the curriculum has expanded. You sit in on a literature class where students debate whether Beowulf or Egil's saga had better emotional character arcs. One young boy argues passionately that Grendel was just misunderstood and needed therapy. His classmate counters by invoking the duty of the shield wall. The debate ends in a poetry slam. Down the hall, a history teacher is projecting a PowerPoint titled Warlords and Welfare, 1,000 Years of Governance. Slide 4 features a pie chart labeled Battle Verses, Feasting Time, 900 to 1000 AD, but not everyone's thrilled. A modern parent, wearing a Bluetooth headset and an expression of existential fatigue, whispers to you in the hallway, "They replaced the chemistry lab with a smokehouse. My son now brings home boiled boar instead of homework." A Viking parent beams proudly nearby. "He is learning application." At lunch, the cafeteria serves salmon stew, honey oats, and runic juice boxes. You watch a group of students reenact a diplomatic raid using lunch trays and dramatic narration. The only injury is a bruised banana. It is given a heroic send-off. In the science lab, students use sunstones to conduct experiments on refraction and navigation. A substitute teacher mutters, "This is technically geology, I think," before being tackled by a group of kindergartners yelling, "To the fjord!" One classroom hosts a Restoration of the Nine Realms group project, which involves building models of Yggdrasil using recycled cardboard and emotionally over-invested glue sticks. Midway through, Loki, the class ferret, escapes and chews on Niflheim. You take a moment in the school library, now a hybrid of scrolls, iPads, and carved runestones stacked like dramatic paperweights. A student shows you his AI-enhanced saga generator. It turns your life into an epic poem, including character flaws and foreshadowing. You try it. The result reads, "You, seeker of tea and quiet, walk the halls of thundered youth. Beware the goat who knows your name." You back away slowly. Outside, recess begins. Children spar gently with padded axes while others play a game called Capture the Hammer, which seems to involve chanting and surprise math questions. A teacher gently reminds one boy not to invoke divine blessings during tag. You attend a parent-teacher conference that evening. The Viking headmistress, Scotty Ironhair, explains the new grading system. A. Approaching glory. B. Worthy effort. C. We needs more mead. Figurative, of course. D. Dangerously close to dishonor. F. Fated to repeat the saga. A concerned mother asks if there are plans to prepare kids for college admissions. Scotty nods. "We've begun teaching ravens to carry transcripts." No one laughs. You think she might be serious. As the day winds down, the students gather in the gymnasium for evening saga circle. There's firelight, simulated, soft chanting, and a skald telling a story about a brave young girl who faced a dragon armed only with a riddle and a backpack full of oatcakes. The children hang on every word. So do you. You walk home through the quiet twilight, passing students sketching runes on sidewalks and carving staves into tree bark. It's not a school, it's a saga incubator. And you're tempted to enroll. You're woken not by roosters or war horns today, but by a shimmering hum. It pulses from the neighbor's window, blue light flashing, slightly too rhythmic to be natural. You peek outside and see what looks like a Viking in full ceremonial gear, wearing a VR headset. His arms flail. He yells, "By the bones of Thor, this tree is not real!" Today, the Vikings have discovered the metaverse. It started quietly. One Viking teen borrowed a gaming console. Then another stumbled upon a VR demo kiosk at the mall and came back muttering about seeing the sky from beneath. Within weeks, the town's ancient meets modern aesthetic has embraced the digital realm. Only now, it's mythic. Mainstream historical fact: Vikings were storytellers. Oral tradition was the core of cultural survival. Epic sagas, myths, and skaldic poetry passed down from generation to generation. These weren't just entertainment, they were memory architecture, shaping identity and preserving history. Quirky tidbit: Viking mythology often features alternate worlds: Asgard, Midgard, Helheim, Jotunheim, each a dimension with its own rules. So in a weird twist of cosmic logic, the metaverse might feel pretty familiar to them. In town, things escalate fast. The first virtual space is called Valhalla 2.0. You're invited in by a friendly young shield maiden wearing both chainmail and LED sneakers. "It's like the real thing," she says, handing you a haptic gauntlet. "Except less blood, more emojis." You step inside, and it is breathtaking. You stand on a golden longship, floating through a sky streaked with northern lights. Giant ravens fly overhead. The rainbow bridge, Bifrost, pulses beneath your feet. You look down. Your avatar is wearing fur-lined tactical boots and a helmet made of pure data. In the corner of your vision, notifications. Thor. The real one has entered your server. Skaldboy99 liked your saga. Freya has invited you to a meet-in, virtual hangout. You float through digital mead halls where avatars tell stories via rune-encoded speech bubbles. One skald streams nightly fireside tales with customizable subtitles. Another hosts a virtual raid, just good-natured fun like paintball, except you can turn into a bear halfway through. You join a classroom inside Yggdrasil's branches, where students learn saga structure using branching narrative engines. A Raven AI teaches metaphors. Life is like an axe, it says. Sharp, brief, and easily lost in snow. Poetic, slightly threatening. Back in the real world, a local tech company partners with Odin to launch Mythos, a VR experience where users relive key Norse myths, riding Sleipnir, sailing through Jormungandr's coils, or feasting beside fallen heroes. It's gloriously immersive. Slightly nauseating. Historians still argue whether ancient myth was meant to instruct, entertain, or manipulate. In Valhalla 2.0, it does all three. You attend a workshop called Narrative as Destiny, writing your digital saga. The instructor encourages you to create your own mythic journey. You choose the reluctant hero with anxiety archetype. Your first task? Rescue a goat named Steve from the realm of frozen Wi-Fi. It's surprisingly emotional. Outside the VR cafes, a movement grows. Digital skaldship. Bards livestream original sagas on Twitch. Viewers donate in the form of mead tokens and fire emojis. A bard named Verse Daddy has 1 million followers and speaks entirely in alliterative rhymed verse. His saga about climate change, Frost and Flame, a world rewoven, goes viral. You meet a coder named Sigrid, who's building a virtual version of Hell, the Norse underworld, complete with chill lo-fi beats and a surprisingly kind AI dog named Garm. "Death's not scary," she says, adjusting her headset. "It's just a different server." You try to explain memes to an elder. He nods slowly and mutters, "Ah, picture riddles of the modern seer class." He proceeds to create his own meme, a photoshopped Loki with a caption that reads, "When you betray your friends but still get invited to feast." You laugh, you cry a little, you like and share. But not all is seamless. A debate erupts in town. Is digital Valhalla sacrilege? Does it cheapen the past? Or is it a new form of honoring myth, like carving runes into pixels instead of stone? A vote is held at the next town thing. Result: 37 in favor of digital realms, 6 opposed, 1 abstention, the goat. Odin weighs in with a tweet. "Real or virtual, a story lived is never lost." You log back into Valhalla 2.01 last time that evening. You watch a sunset over a world shaped by memory, myth, and code. A digital wind rustles your avatar's fur cloak. Behind you, someone's singing a lullaby in Old Norse while rearranging their settings menu. You smile. The saga continues, just in higher resolution. You wake up to the unmistakable thump, thump, thump of bass. It's early. Too early. But there's no mistaking it. Tonight's the night. The Vikings are throwing a music festival. You roll out of bed, throw on your least wrinkled tunic hoodie hybrid, and follow the trail of flashing rune lights, food smoke, and echoing power chords. The banners say it all. Ragnarokapalooza, one night, all realms, infinite decibels. At the entrance, a massive carved archway glows with LED runes. Behind it, speakers the size of horses flank a wooden stage reinforced with iron bands and goat bones. A skald on rollerblades hands you a lanyard with your realm pass. Midgard GA, no axes allowed in the mosh pit. Welcome to the first Viking rock concert. Mainstream historical fact. Music was central to Viking culture. They had flutes, lyres, panpipes, and drums, often accompanying skalds who sang tales of gods, ancestors, and epic battles. Their music wasn't for easy listening, it was for remembering, invoking, and celebrating. Quirky tidbit. The Viking langspill is a kind of bowed zither, basically an early ambient drone instrument. Combine that with throat singing from the Sami people, and you've got the Viking version of experimental doom folk. Back in the present, you see it all on one stage. The opening act, a folk metal group called the Nine Realms. Their lead singer, wearing antlers and a Bluetooth headset, screams into a rune-shaped microphone, while a drummer pounds a traditional war drum, modified with a bass trigger pedal. The crowd loses it. You lose it. A guy in front of you is wearing a cloak made of recycled earbuds. Another girl's helmet has synchronized light panels that pulse in time with the beat. You look down. You're involuntarily dancing in 7/8 time. This is fine. You weave your way through the crowd to the mead tent, which now features craft brew with names like Loki's Lemon Rage, Mjolnir Mango Slam, and Hugin's Hazy IPA. You try one. It tastes like thunder and fermented joy. The second act takes the stage. Valknot, a trio of shield maidens playing Viking instruments hooked up to distortion pedals. Their genre? Electro-ritual skaldcore. One song begins with chanting in Old Norse, morphs into a dubstep drop, and ends with a spoken-word excerpt from the prose Edda whispered through a vocoder. You watch a man cry into his beard. Offstage, there's a rune rave tent, where digital runes fly through fog and lasers pulse to deep ambient beats. A DJ named Ravendrop spins samples of crackling fire, clashing swords, and seagull screeches layered over synth drones. You sway, lost in it. Someone next to you is meditating in full plate armor. You wander toward the poetry pit, a low-lit area with mossy cushions and a candle ring where bards take turns performing spoken sagas. One tells the story of his grandmother's battle with memory loss, framing it as a personal Ragnarok. The crowd is silent. Then someone starts a slow chant. It builds. Remember, remember, remember. You feel it in your bones. Historians still argue whether Vikings partied as hard as we imagine, or if our modern obsession with them glamorizes a harsher truth. But here, there's no argument. This is celebration, transformation, and utter mayhem. The final act of the night? Thunder Songs, a supergroup composed of modern musicians and actual Vikings. Their instruments, electric lyres, bone flutes through MIDI converters, war horns processed through synth stacks. One guy's literally playing a harp with a flaming bow. The main anthem? We will feast in the morning. The crowd sings every word. Even the goats look impressed. The performance ends with a silence so total, even the air seems to hold its breath. Then, an explosion of cheers, howls, and rhythmic axe shield clapping that echoes into the valley. You find yourself back at the food stall with berserker burritos and Helheim hot sauce. You take a bite. You see your ancestors. As the night winds down, festival goers gather at the edge of the hill overlooking the sea. There, lit only by moonlight and flickering torches, a soft acoustic set begins. No mics, just voice and heart. One skald sings, "If the world must end in flame, let it find us dancing. If the gods forget our names, let the drums remember." You lean back in the grass, watching the stars pulse like stage lights in some otherworldly encore. You realize this was never just a concert. It was a communion, ancient rhythms in a modern key. And as the final note fades into the horizon, so do you. You wake up to cheering, not a roar of battle or bass drops this time, but pure nerdy celebration. You pull on your cloak, hoodie, and step outside, where a Viking in a lab coat waves at you from atop a flatbed truck covered in flashing lights and reindeer pelts. "Come, we ride!" he shouts. "To the stars!" Welcome to the Viking space program. Yes, this is real. Turns out, once the Vikings mastered roads, Wi-Fi, and the metaverse, space was next on their list. It began with curiosity, questions about where the gods lived, what stars really were, and whether Bifrost could be upgraded to a launch pad. It evolved into action. The spaceport, located at what used to be the town's landfill, now features a towering longship-shaped rocket called Skull One, wrapped in rune decals and solar panels. The nose cone, carved from repurposed longship timbers. Inside, state-of-the-art computing, and a goat. Of course there's a goat. Mainstream historical fact. Vikings were incredible navigators. They crossed the North Atlantic centuries before Columbus using sunstones, stars, and sea instincts. Leif Erikson is widely believed to have reached North America around 500 years before anyone else thought it was a good idea. Quirky tidbit: Norse cosmology included 9 realms linked by the world tree. Their myths feature sky-faring chariots, floating bridges, and gods who traverse space like it's no big deal. You tell a Viking about Elon Musk, and he shrugs. Ah yes, your local blacksmith. Back in town, things have escalated. The Viking Space Agency, or Norse, now occupies the local community center. Their mission? To send our stories beyond Midgard and poke gently at the stars. The slogan, boldly raid where no Viking has raided before. You attend a pre-launch ceremony. It's half NASA briefing, half sacred ritual. One team member recites equations, another sprinkles crushed juniper on the launch pad. The crew includes Bjorn the Braver, pilot and mead enthusiast. Astrid Stargazer, astronomer who once saw a supernova and called it a cosmic bonfire. Sven, the emotional support goat, trained to wear a tiny space helmet. You peek into the rocket. It smells like leather, pine sap, and ionized optimism. The onboard systems include a navigational AI called Rav9, which occasionally sings lullabies in Old Norse. Someone has duct-taped a rune-inscribed prayer to the control panel. Historians still argue whether Vikings would have become explorers of the cosmos had they survived as a civilization. But here, it feels inevitable. They reached the ends of the earth. Now, they're reaching past it. Outside, a crowd gathers. There are banners. One small step for Viking kind. Mars or Valhalla. Make the moon a mead hall. Vendors sell astronaut helmets made of birch bark. Children wave glow-in-the-dark axes. A boy asks if Jupiter has dragons. His teacher replies, "We'll find out." As launch nears, a countdown begins. Not in numbers, but in kennings, poetic metaphors. Wind horses align. Flame path waits. Sky awaits saga. You feel your chest tighten. 3 dots, 2 dots, 1 dot 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 ignition. The rocket rises with a howl that seems half science, half sorcery. Flames dance in ceremonial spirals. Clouds part. The sky accepts its newest travelers. The crowd erupts, not in chaos, but in quiet awe. 1,000 eyes lifted, faces lit by starlight and fire. You feel it deep in your bones, the ancient hunger to go further, beyond the ice, beyond the sea, beyond even myth. Hours later, the Mission Control Center tracks the ship's trajectory. Raven 9 reports the crew has successfully achieved orbit. A blurry image appears on the screen. Bjorn holding up a mead pouch, grinning like a kid. Sven floats past upside down. Then a message transmits, encoded in digital runes. To whatever gods dwell in the dark, we come in peace, but also with questions. And goats. That evening, you join the community around a bonfire. The sky sparkles with stars and potential. People pass stories like hot bread. Children draw constellations in ash. Someone starts a slow, reverent chant. It sounds like gravity melting. You look up. There's a blinking light across the night sky, arcing over the world like a new branch of Yggdrasil. You whisper to yourself, they're really out there. And for once, you believe the gods are watching. And they're proud. It's your final morning in this strange, glorious saga. You wake before the sun, not to war drums or goats or rune-powered speaker systems, but to a stillness that feels sacred. The air is cool. The sky, streaked with faint silver, hums with something ancient and unfinished. You step outside. Down the hill, the town gathers for a closing ceremony. They call it the Drift, a farewell ritual that blends old Viking customs with modern gratitude. You walk slowly, lantern in hand, past murals of longships and gods, through streets paved in both cobblestones and charger cables. Everyone's here. Shield maidens in denim, elders with smartphones, teenagers in LED cloaks, even the goat. A hush falls. Mainstream historical fact. Vikings believed in cycles, birth, death, renewal, not just of people but of worlds. Ragnarok wasn't the end. It was transformation. From destruction came rebirth. From winter, spring. Quirky tidbit? Norse burial practices included ship burials, cremations, or cairn mounds. Some warriors were set adrift on boats, flaming torches in hand, to return to the gods by sea. The idea, movement in death. The journey continues. At the edge of the fjord, a small replica longship floats on the tide. It's hand-carved, rune-inscribed, and filled with offerings, poems, scrolls, digital tablets, oatcakes, tiny carved goats, symbols of a shared life, of past and future merged. Odin stands quietly near the back, arms crossed, a slight smile tugging his beard. He nods once, like closing a book. The town's bard begins a chant, not loud, but steady, software warm. To those who came before, to those who walk beside, to those not yet born. The chant spreads, grows. Even the children sing now. A torch is passed to you. You step forward, kneel beside the ship, and light it. The flames catch gently, curling up like breath. The ship drifts out, slow and steady, carrying the hopes, stories, and chaotic miracles of the last few weeks. You stand with everyone as it glows across the water, fire against dawn. No one speaks, because nothing needs to be said. You realize something important. The Vikings didn't return to take over. They came back to remind us of stories, of strength, of silliness and sacrifice, that life can be wild, weird, poetic, and still deeply grounded. As the fire fades, the sun breaks over the hills. The town shifts. Quiet returns. Someone turns on a coffee machine. A toddler starts crying because he wants to ride a bear to school. It's all beautifully normal. You head back home, past the library with rune graffiti, past the runestone mailbox, past the faint sound of a shield maiden arguing with Ciri. You pack your bag, full of moss-smelling tunics, half-burnt poems, and a rock shaped suspiciously like Thor's left boot. You pause, one last message carved on your door. Your saga isn't over. It just gets quieter now. You smile, close the door, and walk forward. Now the sky is soft, the sun has finished rising, and the world, after all its wild tales and glowing runes, settles into something gentle. The longship has vanished beyond the bend, its embers like stars that forgot to rise last night. You exhale, slowly. That strange weight in your chest? It's peace, the kind that only comes after something big has ended, but somehow still lingers, like the smell of pine in your pillow, or a song that echoes long after the last note. You stretch out, cozy now beneath your favorite blanket. Maybe there's a whisper of mead still on your breath, or a curl of old Norse poetry hiding behind your thoughts. Let it stay. Let it drift. Because you've traveled far tonight, not in miles, but in wonder. You've seen gods tweet, goats float, warriors cry, and starlight touch the sea. You've felt the clash of the ancient with the modern and found, somehow, it works. Not perfectly, not always gracefully, but truthfully. And now, you are home, in your own bed, in your own time, and the sagas. They're quieter now, just whispers. So close your eyes. Let the fire burn low. Let the raven fold its wings. You don't need to dream of distant realms tonight. You've already been there, and they remember you. Sleep well, traveler.